Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Ben Hosley joins us to talk One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Jesus, I mean, you guys do nothing but complain about how you can't stand it in this place here, and you don't have the guts to just walk out? What do you think you are, for Christ's sake? Crazy or something? Well, you're not. You're not. You're no crazier than the average podcast out there walking on the streets, and that's it. That's right. That's a different kind of intro in tribute to a podcast that is celebrating 10 years. And one of the folks from that podcast is here celebrating their 4th appearance on the show, and they have written their own introduction, so here's even more energy up top. On today's program is Benjamin I'm Back Hosley. He's the producer He's the producer with the most on Blank Check. He's the CEO of Congratulations Clothing and Lifestyle brand. And he is, of course, the raconteur behind Slow Christmas. Give a big you're missing out to Ben!
You're missing out!
Glad to be back. Thank you
Welcome
so
back,
much
buddy.
for going through with that. I really appreciate it. And you delivered on exactly what I was looking for as far as my note to read like a throwback game show host. So thank you. And then of course in post, if you want to just kind of throw in some like vintage, Wheel of Fortune music.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba.
Yeah, something like that. But again, I don't want to, I don't want to edit on my feet right now. You can do whatever you'd like with it.
I gotta say, this is a great way to kick off a discussion of a movie where a guy in a beanie shows up and decides, I'm just gonna take control of this place. I'm just gonna upend the whole apple cart here.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of come in, dick swinging, and just be me,
And I'm just gonna
Really
be that
be
guy in that one scene where McMurphy wants to watch the game. And he's telling the guy, hey, did the game start? And the guy with the beard just looks at him and then just looks away. That's me. Mike is absolutely a Nurse Ratched.
No, Tom. Wow. I was like, I know exactly what Tom's gonna do. I'm gonna own it. He's gonna say, I'm the effete guy in the bathrobe who's just constantly going, I'm not a homosexual. What are you saying about me? I'm like, it's coming. It's coming.
Come on, it's not
coming.
2009. I'm not doing gay jokes anymore. I'm doing joke.
I don't mean that way, but I do mean, like, quite frankly, that he is my vibe. He is a bit of a stick in the mud, and he is just kind of like,
Kyle
why can't
Billy
we play cards? Kyle's Billy Jesus. Well, at least you didn't make a martini. Ben, we are so glad to have you here. We are so glad to have you on the program today. Sometimes we have you on and we pick movies that maybe like our audience might not be familiar with. We pick things that kind of go into other aspects of your personality that are sort of outside of the persona that you're known for on your podcast, Blank Check. And perhaps we could have done that again this season, but it would have been a moral failing on our part if we did not have you on for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
I mean, yeah, what a picture. I mean, for sure, though, I feel like I've been exposed to some really interesting stuff over these last few episodes. And I do love how you think of me when you're curating your seasons and thinking what guests will pair nicely with what movie. And the fact that you thought of me when you decided to do this film, I'm deeply honored. I do think that I just love the spirit of McMurphy so much and do really relate in certain ways to just his like truly he's allergic to rules. And I think for me, I've sort of on Blank Check over the years like established a a history of being sort of a misanthrope, and I just I truly I celebrate this character. I think it's just one of the great wild man of literature and cinema. So
Yeah,
that's
and
my
yet
intro.
and yet,
That's-
dare I say it, Ben,
Please.
the most McMurphy thing I've ever heard you say was not on Blank Check.
Mm.
And I may have evoked this quote before because I think about it. You were on John Gabris's podcast describing your antics. And
Yeah.
at one point you said, I think about this often, you go, remember that store that had the slogan, "Nobody beats the Wiz"? And Gabris goes, yeah, nobody beats the Wiz. And you just go, I beat the Wiz. And
Hell yeah.
that's a McMurphy quote right there. That is the thing McMurphy says to Martini while he just nods, pretending he understands. Like that is the most.
For context, that Nobody Beats the Wiz was a regional electronics and music and whatever department store, and me and my friends used to shoplift like stacks of CDs and DVDs and whatever we could fit in our oversized pants. And yeah, I stand by what I said.
Not to dissect it, my favorite part of that is it implies that you believe that the slogan for the store, "Nobody Beats the Wiz," is them saying you can't shoplift from us. As though any retail store would make their tagline, "We are an impenetrable fortress. We fucking dare you."
There's two forces that have beaten the Wiz in this world: Ben Hosley and capitalism. So and I would like to think that Ben Hosley is as powerful a force as capitalism. Maybe not late stage capitalism. We don't want to think. We don't want to insult Ben, but as a force.
Wow. I mean, that is like one of those things where I know what capitalism is, but I'm so sort of locked in to just this, again, the spirit of McMurphy, that I'm kind of like, yeah, man. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's
I am
unfortunate
like
because
capitalism.
we are going to do 30 minutes on.
He
Adam
did
Smith's
introduce
Wealth of
gambling
Nations right
into the hospital, which is one of
This
my
is
favorite
true.
bits. Which is like you see them gambling and whatnot throughout the movie, but when she just drops like, "Oh, McMurphy has instituted a gambling ring in the back, and you've all lost your cigarettes and also most of your money to him." I was just like, "What a great thing to just drop! That this has just been happening the 6 weeks this movie takes place. It's just he's just ripping these guys off."
Yeah, because he, as much as he cares about his tribe, he also needs to entertain himself.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
I mean,
like there's a balance to his ego and selfishness.
Well, I think it's one of those
yeah.
things about the character, which is that in any other circumstance, he wouldn't even look twice at these guys or even care about these guys. But once they're put on the same level, it's like you said, they're his guys. They're now on his team. We both share the same bad guy. So now I'm going to, whether I like you guys or not, he doesn't like the guy that Mike referenced, the feminine one. But once he realizes who Nurse Ratched is, it's like, okay, now all of you guys, I'm going to steal from you all. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to continue stealing. But now that we have the same, fight the power energy, your guys are now me, which I think, adds a layer to McMurphy than just being like, oh, he's just a good guy and he's going to he would like these guys no matter what. You kind of go like, I don't think he really would.
I mean, I think, and we'll get into this as we go deeper, one of the things that I really, because ahead of this episode, I reread the Kesey novel.
Oh, nice.
And then, which has some differences. It's not as stark as you might think, but it does, our narrator is Chief. throughout the book, things like that. So we'll get into that. But rewatching it for this and reading the book, a thing that struck me to watch it, I dare say, in our modern times, right? From a point of view that Ken Kesey wouldn't have had, and I don't think Miloš Forman had, which is when they're making this film, McMurphy is a disruptor, and he's disrupting the system, right? And so we all believe that to be coded as, well, that's the good guy and the system's the bad guy, right? But without getting too in the weeds, I think we have been, in the last couple months and the last many years, we've been living with a strong case of other dudes who are like, I'm going to disrupt the system. And we're like, oh, this is bad. Maybe disrupting the system shouldn't be selling off national parks and shit. And what I mean by
Brooks Brothers, you ain't if you're disrupting the system, you're doing it in the corniest way.
But what I mean by that, and why I accent that, is that what's fascinating about this film is even if you don't assign like good guy, bad guy to it, right?
Okay.
It still works, and the story still works because it's ultimately a portrait of systemic failure. And because it's not the system that is the asylum, whether or not it ever was going to help these guys, which in theory it may have in the beginning, the system is failing. And McMurphy, rather than necessarily casting him as, like Tom said, not casting him as just a pure good guy, right? McMurphy is rather this figure that comes in and shows all of the people within this asylum how fragile the system is. Right? And so there's this tension in that where even if you're not assigning morality to it, right? This doesn't have to be a story of good guy and bad guy. This is something that you look at and go, well, this is an important lesson in terms of like, hey man, if you don't make sure that the system benefits the people that are in it, it's not going to take much to break it. McMurphy, if the system worked and everybody was getting what they wanted, right? If all the people were being treated well, if Nurse Ratched hadn't at some point along the line stopped being interested in helping the patients and became interested in power and control, if none of that had happened and the system still worked, a two-bit con like McMurphy wouldn't be able to bring this whole thing down. It's a portrait of how this thing became a house of cards and how easy it was for him to dismantle it.
Well, I do just want to push back on one thing that you said, which is that I actually do think Miloš Forman would have a good sense of that kind of disruptor character in power. He was born in Czechoslovakia in 1932, right. And he didn't get to America until the 70s. So he did kind of have a firsthand experience of what that kind of guy, in multiple versions, I should say, being in Europe at that time. So I do think he understands that, and I think that's why this movie works so well and why he's able to make the clash of McMurphy and, quote unquote, the system. He brings it down to a personal level. He doesn't, it's really not, it's about how the hospital is so blind that they can let a Nurse Ratched get so much power in this place, but it never paints it as like the other doctors don't care, more that Ratched found the flaw in the system, or the system in general, that would allow her to have such tight control over people and people that nobody would believe if they said she's being abusive. There's the scene where McMurphy's talking to the doctor and he's like, I don't think Ratched likes to play a fair game. And even though that doctor doesn't think McMurphy's crazy at all throughout the movie, which is another scene that I think is great, but I'll get to that. It's that she is the villain, and it's not the system so much as the people that see that they can abuse a system to their own sadistic, cruel benefits, because she's not really personally benefiting from it. It's not like there's a subplot where she's like stealing money from the hospital or whatever, or stealing like commissary from these guys. She's just sadistic, and not in a cartoonish way. She's just, and almost
She
sadistic in a
sucks.
way where she doesn't know she's sadistic, because
God,
her
she
reaction when
sucks.
Billy dies is a human reaction of, oh, I maybe pushed this too far,
Yeah.
but she still does it, and you don't get the sense that it maybe will change even with McMurphy lobotomized at
Bro.
the end.
She acting like she's on a reality show.
Yeah.
Crazy. I just want to add, it's like such a microcosm, right, of our society. And man, I need help. I need help doing shit. I'm so sick of shit. Like, I'm so sick of like having to just like do my regular ass bullshit, errand fucking laundry ass shit. We all got fucking problems and need some fucking help, and no one really can help you except for yourself. And like, that is, I think, what is embodied in Nicholson's character. He is this deeply individual, strong-willed spirit, but unfortunately, he's so horny that he gets in trouble.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
And that is the one thing we do need to say, is
Yeah.
that he, of course, is, he's such he's kind of almost, I mean, an anti-hero, and a little bit in that when you're introduced to him, you know that he is like committed kind of a despicable act to land himself where he is.
He's a violent statutory rapist, right?
Hmm?
But the thing that I think, and especially with the Kesey novel, including that as well, is I think we partly have to place ourselves in the 60s and 70s, right? Which is one of the things that we've had to touch on this a lot in the show, because we get a lot of 70s movies that deal with
sexuality and
that
relationships
and we kind of have to remember that like the way that is treated at that time, these older guys with teenage girls, that is treated in the 70s like yeah, we know it's illegal, but it's illegal like weed's illegal, right? The squares are just uptight about that. So that's a way they treat it. But I do think that when Kesey does it, and when the film does it, I don't think it's saying it as an endorsement. But I do think the thing that's interesting about McMurphy, and especially the way he talks about the stuff with Dr. Brooks, is there's an undercurrent of McMurphy essentially saying like, yeah, I got into fights at bars and I was screwing around with 16-year-olds. Like 5 or 6 guys you knew back in your hometown,
Normal guy stuff, and then he goes to pound it.
Well, he I don't think he's even saying normal guy stuff so much as it's just like, hey man, listen, we all know somebody that does this. I just got caught. And
sure. Okay.
And so and to be clear, and I think that's part of why Dr. Brooks takes to McMurphy as he does, is that Dr. Brooks doesn't see McMurphy as mentally ill, but I think Dr. Brooks looks at McMurphy and goes, yeah, I knew some guys who got into some trouble back in the day, and this could be my opportunity to reform you.
And
I can fix you like I couldn't fix, Billy down the block when I was coming of age.
And I think such a great little detail about McMurphy's character is all of this, but they in that introductory scene, it's like he's 38, and you're like, oh, he's not like, it's gotten to a point where it's like not like, oh, he's a rebellious kid anymore. It's like, oh, you're just like that gross old man that like you're still like young enough where you're not like, it's still gross, but like you go, all right, you still got your looks, but then when you hear you're 38, you're like, why are you still doing this?
Yeah.
Well, like
For sure.
you've gotten way past the point where being that guy at the bar, getting into fights, picking up chicks, and being such an id-fueled, like, charming maniac that you could just easily be convinced that a 16-year-old girl is 35. Like, just like you're just so filled of instinct that, yeah, it's an interesting balancing act, because you see this a lot in especially the 70s stuff, but just a lot of movies of like the genre, like horror movies or action movies or whatever, where they try to introduce a character and they try to, like, oh, he's an anti-hero, so they give them slightly unlikable traits, but they don't want to push it too far into unlikable, because, like, they could have said, oh, he's in jail for rape, not statutory rape, and you'd be like, okay, I can't ever, like, go for this guy. And they give you the sense that all right, he maybe did get tricked by, not to say you could get tricked by a 16-year-old, but like, okay, maybe he is such an idiot and just thinks with his dick so much. He probably did just think like, oh yeah, she's telling me the truth. She's 18. Why look any further into this? I'm horny right now. And you go, okay, he's kind of a dumbass.
Well,
bro, if you got to ID the girl that you're hooking up with, like, maybe don't do it.
That's such
a golden rule, I'd say.
It's a good thing to think. Yeah.
I think it's all.
By the way, he's 35 or 38. I mean,
he's 38. Yeah.
All right. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just it is like, it's rough.
But that's the thing. Fact. I think it's exactly, and we've also talked about, like I said, we've talked about this before on the show, the way that there's kind of this, it's the idea when you go through like the pantheon of American cinema and like American cultural output, the subject of like teenage sexuality is a thing that it just keeps swinging back and forth in a weird way where, like, we never agree on it. It's like when you look at the 70s, things went way too far in the, like, teenagers are just small adults. And we all, by like 1980, went, no, that's bad. That's real bad. That's also reacting to the insane kind of puritanism of the 40s and 50s that is represented by Billy Bibbitt's mom, who is seen in the book, not in the movie, who is basically like essentially fucked up her son by being like, you're not old enough to be around girls. You can't look at girls. I don't want to see that girl you want to marry. You can't be around that girl. She's gonna deflower you. She's gonna this and that. And so it's this, in a way, and again, that's more present in the novel, but it seems like Kesey is kind of trying to tap in, and the film is trying to tap in this idea of like, man, we haven't really figured out the mores of sexuality, and yet we're sure trying. We're really nailing things down, and we're basically fucking people up. By the way, Ben, did you want to introduce our other guest? I keep noticing other guests, and
yeah, Pig is also hanging out.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I have heard Pig evoked on many podcasts. I've never seen Pig, and this is delightful.
She keeps digging her nails into my leg. Here, I'll just tip it down so we can get a little bit of her locked in as well. But continue. God. I don't mean to distract you.
I mean, listen, the cat's there. We're going to be distracted, but we'll power through. Right. I think all of that you're saying is very true. One side note that popped in my head when you talked about how the 70s was so like, yeah, the teens, they're just little people, right? Have you ever seen either of you seen the movie Night Moves with Gene Hackman? May he rest in peace. He just passed recently as we recorded this.
Yeah.
I have not. I'm aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
I'm aware of it too. I haven't seen it.
It's a great neo-noir, almost very Long Goodbye-ish, but Melanie Griffith's in it, and she's naked in it for a good deal. She's 17, and they cast her when she was 16, and when they found out that she was 16, they said, well, let's wait until she turns 17 so we can shoot these scenes. And when you hear that tidbit, you go, I don't know if I really love that.
It's Tom, when you said that, all I thought of is the first episode of Arrested Development where you hear George Sr. be like, don't worry, I've got a plan. They can't try a husband and wife for the same crime. That's not true. That's not legal. Oh.
Dude,
I have to
Like,
watch
that's
fucking
how I
Liars.
felt in that moment. I was like, oh, no.
holy shit.
But and now my brain is connected to another story of another Gene Hackman movie, funnily enough, Prime Cut, with Lee Marvin. Sissy Spacek's in it. It's before Carrie, and the director Michael Ritchie wanted her to be nude in a scene, like very nude, like a rough scene. And Lee Marvin was so like enraged by the Michael Ritchie trying to like almost force her to do it. He's like almost beat the shit out of the guy and had to be like talked down, and he like took Sissy Spacek away, and he's like, listen, if this guy ever tries to get you naked again, you fucking come and get me and I will kill that motherfucker. I'm like, all right, Lee, you may have been a drunken maniac, but I gotta respect you there.
Well,
but
in a way, Tom, you bringing that story kind of touches on another theme of this film, and then we'll play the registry and do all that. But I do think ultimately, when we're talking about system and systemic failure, right? What is the thing? When we build up to get to skip to the ending for 1 second. The fascinating thing about this and about this story going on is McMurphy keeps trying to come up with all of these ways to break Ratched, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to watch a pretend baseball game, right? Or I'm going to punch glass, or I'm going to do all these things, right? I'm going to go on a fishing trip. And he's like, I'm going to bend your rules. And she's like, I'm going to have more rules. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And ultimately, when she uses her kind of power, right, her soft power to force Billy to kill himself, right, McMurphy breaks and just starts strangling her, right?
Yeah.
And he starts strangling her, and she's so ill-prepared for this. And it ends up being the thing that, obviously the ending has her in the neck brace, barely able to talk. And there's this kind of, again, fascinating thing that we hear that McMurphy is violent throughout the movie, right? That he's been locked up for violence. But the interesting thing is he doesn't go straight to violence in the movie, right? You would think, the way they describe him and the way he gets advice, that you would think that he would be a violent guy from the jump. Instead, he really tries to like mess with her and jab at her, and in the end deploys violence in a way to sort of suggest like, okay, if you're going to keep adding new rules, right? If you're going to make this game impossible to win, the ultimate conclusion is I'm just going to hurt you. I'm just going to be violent. And I'm because that's the undercurrent of...
Well, they give us a few examples through the movie of him being violent, and it's at points when he is almost pushed too far, and not in a way of like, oh, the rules have been broken, but just in like when they're taking Cheswick away to get electroshocked, and he's like, he punches the window to get the cigarettes, and he's literally just trying to be like, it's like he can't even comprehend that these people running the place don't see the people under their care as humans, and like a part of his brain just short circuits, and he starts fighting the guards.
It really made me think of watching it this time, how it's like Cheswick is acting like a fucking baby, literally having a fucking tantrum.
Yeah.
And he loses it because it's like that instinct to just get this thing to stop crying.
Yeah.
I almost kind of feel like he has this moment of just like, enough. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't be around this anymore. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think he, at the end, he loses control in a way that, he loses his cool and does something that will, just,
it's one of those things
deep. It's really deep, and it will affect him for the rest of his life. I mean, it's a tragic ending.
It's one of those things that reminds me of the saying that the most cynical person you'll ever meet used to be the most romantic person. And that he plays himself off as the con man. He drinks and he screws around, and he plays cards, and he knows how to get over on people.
He's fun.
He's fun. Well, listen, he's fun. I love being
fun
that
as
guy.
hell. Are you kidding me? He's one of the funnest guys of all friggin' time.
But he's one of those guys that would
I'm having
probably
a
tell
margarita,
you,
by the way.
hell yeah, love it. But I feel like he'd be one of those guys that's like, yeah, man, the world's fucked up. I know how bad everything is. And it's not until he really, like, he's been in prison, so he's been in bad situations. But seeing such callous, inhumane cruelty for no reason, like, he literally cannot even comprehend why Ratched is doing what she's doing. It breaks him in a way that you wouldn't think a guy like him would be broken. And I think that's the most fascinating part of it. And the thing that kind of...
Question, though,
Yes.
to that. May I ask? Do
Go
you
ahead.
think that his presence is causing her to react differently than how she had maybe conducted herself at her job prior to him arriving? I kind of think that he going against, pushing back, I think is also causing her to overcompensate, to overreact, to become more controlling, more manipulative. Like I do think that she maybe for sure has always gotten off on this, but I think he has forced things to heighten and ramp up.
I think so.
I think yes, but I think with the caveat that she's reacting differently. But I think it's the idea of I don't doubt that she has had difficult patients before, right?
Right.
And what I think you see as the film goes on is that I don't think she views McMurphy as necessarily a uniquely disruptive force at first, right? I think it's rather like, this is a wild stallion that got brought on the ranch. We have ways of getting this creature docile, right?
Yeah.
And you see her try and deploy those. And what's interesting about it is that the stuff that should shut him down, right? He finds ways around. And you almost get the sense that there is, I wouldn't say a begrudging respect in any way, right? But I think that there's almost a gamesmanship that Ratched deploys after a certain point, because she has the opportunity to be rid of him. That's the great part of that board meeting when Dr. Brooks and everybody are like, we can get rid of McMurphy. Like, we got to get him out of here. And Ratched is the one who goes, no, I think he should stay. Because at a certain point...
she wants... By getting rid of him, he wins.
Yeah.
He gets out of there.
She wants to hurt him.
Fuck with him.
That's
She
what I'm saying.
loves it.
It's that at a
loves
certain point, at the beginning, it becomes, I'm going to tame the bucking bronco to maintain order. And at a certain point, she becomes more obsessed with breaking McMurphy than she becomes with maintaining order.
And that's the boardroom scene is the thing that is the scene that I hinted at before, which is it's the moment when the movie does shift into, there is a good guy, there is a bad guy. She is now going to shift this into a thing that didn't need to happen, because McMurphy's just doing what he does. He's just trying to get out of trouble, trying to do whatever he can. He's trying
to have fun.
He's trying to have fun. He wants to watch baseball. He wants to play cards. He wants
to play basketball. Are you kidding me? The basketball stuff. Oh man, when he gets Chief to finally like play, what a triumphant moment.
Yeah.
It really. It's like this movie is so simple. It's just like little stuff like this. You're like, what an impactful
that's why
thing
it's
I'm
like
witnessing.
I think, because I thought this before, and it's weird to think of this movie in this way, but this movie's almost like just a hangout movie, even though it's like, set in a mental institution and it's a tragic ending and it's all of that. But like, it's kind of just fun to just hang out with Nicholson as he's just being a dude with these guys and just sort of waking them up to their own helplessness.
But
They're forced helplessness, like, which is another brilliant stroke. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, finish your thought.
No. I mean, we could get into all of this stuff.
In fact, if we're going to talk about Ben, are you going to talk about the cast?
I mean, because I was gonna, as much as like shouting out Nicholson, like we got to go into just this murderer's row of character actors,
and we will because, and this is a great transition here.
Nice.
I know that they talk about it before we talk about all the people in this scrappy little film. Let's hear what the National Film Registry had to say. Here's what the Library of Congress had to say about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Lawrence Halbin and Bo Goldman masterfully adapted Ken Kesey's novel, earning themselves Oscars for Best Screenplay, and providing director Miloš Forman with a platform for a hard-hitting and wry condemnation of the establishment and its ethos of conformity. Jack Nicholson is a ne'er-do-well who plays crazy to avoid prison work detail and is sent to the state mental hospital for evaluation. There, he encounters an assortment of mostly harmless inmates presided over by the icy Nurse Ratched, Louise Fletcher. Nicholson leads the inmates to challenge Nurse Ratched, incurring her wrath and setting up their eventual showdown. Nicholson's and Fletcher's Academy Award-winning turns are bolstered by outstanding performances from Brad Dourif and Will Sampson as two of the more memorable inmates. The cast also includes Danny DeVito and Christopher Lloyd on their way to starring roles in the TV series Taxi.
Now, here's what I love about that is that you can tell when that statement was written by the last sentence. And I don't mean to be rude. I think Taxi is a great show, but they say it as though the readers are going to go, oh my God, of course, Taxi. And I'm like, I don't know if Taxi's getting much play anymore from the younger generations. I don't know if that's something that means something.
Probably.
No, in 93, yes, but I'm saying like they say it, whereas now, like, Tom, let's be real here. I'm just going to call out one of our Gen Z listeners. I am actually cool, so not hearing that and going, Taxi, of course, you know.
Well, no, of course not, but like...
But I'm saying, you know, it's interesting how this has a cultural cachet still, whereas...
Are you saying, like, whereas, like, MASH is more still kind of universally known? I don't even know if that's the right example.
I don't even know about... I just think it's more the case...
I guess Baywatch is kind of like a thing that maybe kids know about.
I would contrast it more with the idea of, like, I think it's going to be one of those things where, like, someday, if we are all parents... and the children that we have care about Oscars, they'll go, what was the big deal about Jeremy Strong and Kieran Culkin at the Oscars that year? And we'll have to go, they were on a show called Succession. We were all really into it. You know what I mean? Like, it's that. Like, I mean, obviously, Christopher Lloyd and Danny DeVito have films that have stood the test of time as well outside of this. But I think a lot about, like, TV Guide in, like, 2005 made a list of the greatest TV characters of all time, and number one was Louis De Palma from Taxi. And I'm like, I don't think anybody's doing that now.
No.
I don't think that's Trump and Tony Soprano today.
Now they're fucking number one is fucking, what's that little ass fucker from...
Where is this going?
God, fuck. This joke will be good if I can think of... He's like the little boy that's a spinoff. Young Sheldon.
Young Sheldon.
I had edit that into where I nail it right away. Okay.
I honestly, Ben, I disagree. I want the audience to feel exactly what I felt, which is, where is this going? What's that little guy? Stranger Things? Game of Thrones? I don't know what this is. Is this a cartoon? Where are we going? Yeah, SpongeBob? Were you trying to get to SpongeBob? And then you land Young Sheldon.
I'm only holding so much information in my head at once, like filed away deep in the synapses of my brain was Young Sheldon, and it just took me like a solid minute to fire. We got there though, we got there and we all laughed.
We had a great time.
We laughed.
It was wonderful. We all had a.
It'll be in the clip
blast.
Okay, so this was 93 when it was entered into.
Yes. No, wait. Okay. Hang on. 89, 90, 91, 92. Yeah, 93. That is 93.
Nice.
Yeah, this is the 93 induction year. So
right after Batman Returns, so, you know, they could have mentioned the Penguin, but, you know.
They could have. Well, I
Oh
could
wow, you're
coulda
right.
mentioned Doc
Maybe
Brown.
it just missed because I mean that's an iconic role.
Well, but I
Could have
think
mentioned
they're
Doc
trying.
Brown.
Yeah, but they're bringing up the fact that like obviously the two of them were on Taxi and what a big deal that was.
Oh sure.
And the fact that they were in this film prior. It is interesting to think about this film. When I was listening to the commentary on the Blu-ray, them talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, not to keep evoking this year's Oscars, but like to hear Michael Douglas and Miloš Forman talk about making this movie, they talk about it like they were making a Nora. Like they were making a super low budget movie, because Miloš Forman is getting into the weeds of like, so what we did is we couldn't hire any name actors besides Nicholson because we didn't have the budget. So everyone in this is one of their early roles because we just couldn't afford name actors for anything else. And to save money, Dr. Brooks is played by the actual supervisor of the mental hospital.
Nice.
Which is insane, by the way.
That is.
They went up to him like, would you want to do this role? And he's like, sure. And they said, so here's your first day of shooting. We're just going to give you the file for R.P. McMurphy. We've written his patient file, and you're just going to improv a scene with Jack Nicholson where
really?
Yes, that's real. That's how they did that scene. So they gave him the file, and they gave it to him on the day, and they said, what you're going to do is we want you to intake Nicholson like you would any other patient, and he's going to try and fuck with you.
I love that.
And then Forman told Nicholson, he's like, look, here's point A, here's point B, here's point C. These are the three things you need to hit. I don't care how you get there. So all of that business of him picking up like the fishing photo or him trying to catch the fly or any of that, that's all just Nicholson trying to get a rise out of this actual doctor.
Dude, all right. Nicholson in this moment when he makes this movie, and I'm going to borrow a term from the younger generation, Gen
From young
Z,
Sheldon?
Well, sure. Yeah. I think. I don't know. I think because it's a period show. Anyway, I've never watched it. But to borrow a phrase, his riz is off the charts.
It's out of control.
Exploding. You look at him and you're like, he is fucking like, he is vibrating. He is just like it's like such an explosive thing of just witnessing how incredible he is truly in this moment.
Well,
it's wild.
It's interesting because it calls to mind another Nicholson performance that you've actually covered on your podcast, Ben, which is Witches of Eastwick, right? Insofar as what makes Nicholson work in Witches of Eastwick, even though he's playing the devil, essentially, is that when Nicholson shows up, your brain doesn't know, is this guy good or bad? You're just like, this is Nicholson, and that's it. That's the only thing. It's just that. The same thing is at play in this film, which is, like we talked about, McMurphy's stealing from these guys, essentially. Like he's conning these guys, and he's not helping any of them like get necessarily out of there or anything like that, until the end when he's trying to, escape with Chief. Like he's not necessarily interested in bettering some of these people so much as fucking with them sometimes.
I think, though, I want to counter that because I think that he really cares. And I said this before. I think like he is selfish. He's a selfish, flawed person, but he didn't need to steal the school bus.
Well, that's the thing.
He doesn't need to stay.
I'm only referring to his beginning introduction, like when he first walks in, right?
Yeah,
when he's walking
before
around,
he's shifted and changed.
I'm saying when he first walks in and he's basically like, I've got a deck of pornographic playing cards. I'm going to disrupt this poker game. He becomes in like the Pied Piper and he starts strutting around like, I'm going to have all of these fucks in the palm of my hand, right? Like he comes in.
He got out of work. He didn't have to do manual labor anymore. He's feeling real good.
And he comes in with the idea of like, I've got all these guys figured out as soon as I meet them, which is why I know the quote that I pulled to shamelessly rip off how your show opens. The quote that I pulled there, where he's yelling at them like, you guys could just leave. He's so baffled by that because he was so confident he had these guys' numbers, right? That he was that when he finds out that they could just walk out, it changes how he views all of these guys. because up until now, it's been prison rules, right? Up until now, it's been, we're all locked in here. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You got to try and, you got the guys you get one over on, and you got the guys you keep close to you. And now all of a sudden, his understanding of a lot of these guys is thrown off, and he sort of realizes it's not just a matter of biding your time or anything like that. Like, these guys need to find their confidence, find their soul again. It's you see this shift happen. So he does come to care of them. He has this found family in it. I mean, there's ways to read the way that the movie kind of, and especially the novel too, where Chief's kind of narrating this, and this idea of like, McMurphy could absolutely leave. He's got the opportunity to leave the hospital when it's him and Chief. They're all having the party. But especially, like, he's there. He could leave. They're right there at the window. And he sits down and drinks. And what I love is the novel kind of is a little more like, well, McMurphy, he just got too drunk. He passed out before we could go. The movie just cuts to black and comes back. And there's a question for you as the viewer of like, did McMurphy just get drunk and black out and forget to leave? Or was there some part of him that started to feel like, as much as he hates the hospital, like, well, if I go out there, I got nothing. And these are my people now,
Sure. Yeah, it's a bummer. That part I'm always like, come on. Damn.
It's the scene where he's ranting about how, I thought you guys were all stuck here, and that's why I was fucking with her, and you guys just let me keep fucking with her and digging myself deeper. It's such a great scene, because you just realize, like, oh, he's only doing this because he thought the rules were different. And once he found out the rules were different, he's like, what the fuck? I've been doing this all for no reason. I've been actually making things worse.
He's justifying him being an idiot, by blaming them, because for like what he's playing by, like, I'm the like bad kid in class and I'm like messing with the teacher kind of like mentality. Like, what rules does he it doesn't read as him being rational at all.
No, I mean, there's plenty of times where he's not rational. I mean, the scene where he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to pick up this water fountain, this marble water fountain, and throw it through the window.
So funny.
It's just funny. Like, it's like, come on, man.
I know. Like, I love how he's like,
well, at least I fucking tried.
Up. Yeah,
but then
just getting warmed up. It's so funny. It's so good.
But then like the ending of that scene of just like, well, at least I fucking tried, is just like, okay.
Yeah, man.
His slow awakening to the humanity of the situation he's found himself in is like,
right.
You could have those moments of it's funny, but then just like, oh, like, right, in his own weird, maybe not even purposeful way, he's probably just saying it just to like save face. A little of like, hey guys, wake the fuck up. Like, I know life's just tough and I know life sucks, but just crawling into a hole and saying, oh, they're going to help make me better, even though they are tangibly not making your life better, is probably not the right choice to make.
Well, he's also, because prior to him trying to rip the fountain out, there's the great moment of, two of the guys, I'm not going to remember all the character names, but the two guys,
they're playing Monopoly.
Into this whole, yeah, they're playing Monopoly. They're getting into this argument. The tension is just rising and not going anywhere. And McMurphy picks up the hose and starts spraying them, right? And it's easy to kind of view that as just him being a dick. And I don't think McMurphy sees it as anything more than him being a dick. But I wrote down that it's the same thing as when Mookie throws the trash can through Sal's window and do the right thing, right? Neither one is like consciously making a decision of like, this will solve the problem. But there's just this innate understanding of like, this tension has to break somewhere. This tension has to break somewhere. And when McMurphy starts spraying them, even though now they're pissed at McMurphy and all that, it breaks the tension of them bickering, right? it breaks that tension the same way like Spike has always talked about, like when people go, did Mookie do the right thing? He goes, that's not the question. Mookie threw the trash can and everybody targeted their rage at an inanimate pizzeria instead of wherever this could have gone. And I think that McMurphy, whether it's from his time in the streets, whether it's from his time in prison, like he's not, I'm not saying this derogatorily, he's not smart, but he understands people. He seems to really get, how to work things. And that's also why he gets along with the other doctor. So, with Dr. Brooks, and why he gets along with those people so well is he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to, it made me think a bit in a weird way of how people talked about, actually a different kind of, how people talked about Charles Manson, right? That Manson, when he was in court, would be, I'm Jesus Christ. I'm going to do all these crazy stunts. And then when he was locked up just with his guard, he would turn around and just very casually be like, hey man, I could get you like $5,000 if you just get me out of here. Like, it's super. He would just be like a regular, like affable guy when he thought that would be to his advantage. And then he was pulling the stunts. And McMurphy also seems like, he would never pull those kind of stunts on Dr. Brooks, right? He would not. And in fact, the novel gets into that one of the elements that the movie changes from the novel is that the whole debate around baseball, and there's other systemic changes too. There's a break room that they want access to. One of the things McMurphy does that really pisses off Nurse Ratched in the novel is he goes to the guy above Ratched and goes very plainly, just goes, hey, I think the fellows would really benefit from going on a fishing trip. What do you say we handle it like a democracy? We just have a vote, and you'd like to come supervise the fishing trip, right? I think we could have a good time. He's just very like matter of fact, plain like, hey, we're pals here. We both want the same thing here. And it seems to like elevate Ratched even more when she's looking at it going like, well, why is he pulling these Bugs Bunny stunts with me? But nobody believes it because when he's in the room with the other guys, he's just, well, golly gee, I think we could have a fun time fishing.
It's funny. He's literally pulling the same shit that she's pulling. She's being a miserable, mean, maybe not on it, like obviously a miserable, mean bitch. It's not like she's like cutting the guys when they're not looking or what have you. She's literally just being she's just being controlling. And if like I said, if any of these guys are like, hey, it's weird that she's like doing these things, even though we're trying to talk to her on a personal level, even though we're voluntarily here, so she shouldn't be treating us like we're, one of the invalids in the bed that she could just do whatever she wants with. It's like, yeah, it's the thing that makes good protagonists and antagonists, the opposite side of the same coin sort of thing. It's like there are shared elements between the two, and it's that she seems to be pretty good at reading people too.
Yeah.
Until she meets McMurphy. And he's pretty good at reading people too until he meets her, because she's never seen anyone that couldn't be broken the way McMurphy is. He's never met anyone as callously cruel as she is. I love that you get the sense that nobody in the hospital was prepared for any of this at all by the mayhem that ensues at the end when everyone finds the party. And then when McMurphy starts beating up the guards and strangling Ratched, they have to call guards from, which is a little detail I noticed on this rewatch and I kind of love, is that there's a whole other hospital happening around this one little wing. So they have to start calling in guards from the other wing. The doctor shows up and is trying to like restrain everything. It's like nobody was prepared for any of this on any level. And another little detail that I loved on this rewatch is in every scene with Nurse Ratched, just watching her assistant nurse, who's just there quietly the whole time, and she seems very clearly, the way she's reacting just with her eyes is like, none of this is normal. What's going on here? Like, there's this weird dynamic happening, and I don't know what's going to happen. And that she's the one that has to find Billy. It's just like, oh, that kind of sucks, because you kind of get the sense she's like knows something's wrong, but she can't put a finger on it, and then she's the one that ends up covered in Billy's blood is kind of fucking sad.
Like, I don't feel bad or empathize or can put myself in the shoes of Ratched, but I do feel for the people that work there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because there's a moment where when they're like looking for Billy at the end, they don't know he's in one of the rooms with the girl. And when the one guard opens the door and looks in, he gets this look of just like, all right, you're in trouble, but also good job, kid. Like,
Yeah.
he's just, and they play basketball with them, and that, they're playing like just guys, like, oh, come on, man, you can't have Chief doing that move and blah, blah, blah. And like, they're just fucking around. And yeah, like, it really does seem like everyone below her is like, yeah, they're just there. Scatman Carruthers shows up and gets himself in big trouble just because he's like, oh, I want to get drunk and I want to fool around with some young broads. And you're just like, oh, Scatman.
He's working the night shift,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
That shit's not easy.
Yeah, it's
That's
not.
like the hardest shift that someone
Yeah.
has to serve in the middle of the night. Like, it's so boring. It's so lonely. Of course you're enticed. I mean, come on.
No,
and
it's
the guy with the most riz in the fucking planet is like, come on.
It's also there's
come
also
on, man.
in the novel there's more of this, and I'm glad it's not in the movie because Ken Kesey does not write people of color well. I'm just gonna say it. Not great at it. Not great.
Okay.
But there is this undercurrent in the novel where he focuses more on the fact that like all of the attendings in this hospital are black guys. And this idea of, in some senses, McMurphy, there's one guy who they keep in the film, the one who's like jabbing at him with the stick. There's one guy he doesn't get on with, but some of the other guys, like there's this idea of like the men working there are only working this job because they can't get better jobs, right? They don't want to be working there. They don't like to, and they tend to treat McMurphy. I think at one point, I could be misremembering, but like they say to McMurphy, like, hey man, you got to follow their rules. And they make a point that like they're saying you have to follow their rules, not you have to follow our rules. But just sort of like, look, man, you were in the joint. Now you're in here. I'm here. We're all kind of, none of us are where we want to be, and none of us are. We all have to answer to people
enforcers.
We don't like. Yeah,
they're enforcers for bureaucracy.
But they're enforcers who don't believe in it too. That's the crucial thing.
Of course not.
Other than but with Ratched too, and I want to, because the thing I really latched into with Ratched this time, because Tom was texting me, Ben, I have a habit of when there's an extended franchise, I watch everything. Right? I go out of my way.
Where's this going? Is there a sequel to this I've never heard of?
There's a prequel, Ben.
Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Ben,
Nest?
I'm not joking. There's a prequel. So in the
really?
2010s, Ryan Murphy made
not
a
the
Netflix
2010s.
show.
This was like 4 years ago. This was maybe around the pandemic time.
So
are you kidding?
You don't want it. It was called
Wait,
Ratched.
what is it called?
Ratched.
It's just called Ratched?
It's Sarah Paulson as Nurse
2020
Ratched for the events of Cuckoo's Nest.
Get out of here.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, it got a 2-season order from Netflix. They made 1 season and then just didn't bother making the other one.
I can't believe this.
Yeah, this is real. And so I always go out of my way like to watch anything. Tom texted me today. He goes, "Hey, are you?" Maybe half joking, like, "Are you going to watch all 8 episodes of Ratched?" And I had to say,
"Did you?"
I could not do it.
Good.
Not because of time, because I watched 1 episode and went, I can't do this. Partly because Ratched, the show, number one, it clearly just wants to be Bates Motel and can't be. But Ratched, the show, is trying to get at the idea that there's something inherently wrong with Nurse Ratched. There's some like inherent evil. And I think that's a misunderstanding of the character because, especially watching it this time, I realized, again, when I was talking about like you can't map this onto ideologies or things like that, you know who Nurse Ratched is? She's not the embodiment of evil. She's not even like, a monstrous sadist. What Nurse Ratched is it's somebody, we all knew them, whether it was in high school or college or in some creative clique we were in. There's that one person who has mastered sort of the social rules, right? The social etiquette. And they maybe started out as the person that was trying to make everyone better and make everybody behave themselves, right? They started out being, I'll just speak to all of us have spent plenty of time in many working environments in Brooklyn, right? And there's always at least one person at your job who is the one that, like, at first, they are the one who makes everybody better by going like, hey guys, let's not say this way, right? Like, let's not use these particular words, or like, hey, let's be more respectful of people's time, or things like that. And you're like, hey, thank you for letting me know, right, that this term is outdated or things like that. But then they start to kind of just run on those rules, and they start to become the person that, like, all they do every time is show up and go, guys, we talked about this, okay? We talked about this and they just start to get more, and you start to realize, like, this is a person who just starts really embracing the power that comes from being the person that maintains order.
Well,
And it stops being helpful, and it starts being, man, we don't necessarily want you hanging around as much anymore.
Well,
You're kind of you started being mean to people. You've started using your kindness to be mean to people.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I do think there is a sadism to her. And I do think I do think Ryan Murphy completely misunderstands why she's such a great villain, which is that not every sadist is going to have this, epic, like, oh, I'm like a serial killer who's on the run and makes like up a new identity, and like, oh, I have this also like this rape backstory, and like all the sort of Ryan Murphy nonsense where like everyone has to have like the worst thing happen to them and like 11 more of those things, and everything's cranked up to 11. The thing about her, which is that thing we see in real life, and not the people at work that do what you were saying, it's the middle managers that love you like, they love just that they have these people under them that they can just put they could just needle and put the thumb on the scale against them, because they have some sort of power, but not really, but they're going to use what power they have, because there's a level of sadism you have to be to get to where Ratched is, to where a middle manager is.
Dude, I always think about Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs. I don't remember the exact quote where she turns like on Hopkins and is like, why don't you use that powerful powerful perception on yourself, doctor?
Yeah.
I always think about that, and to what you're saying, it's like they are, so hyper aware and have all this school and training to, analyze and make decisions for people in a way that is, you're deciding like how a person, their freedom, like how they can live their lives. And I do think that they're totally unaware of their internal, like, or their behavior. They can't see themselves. They can't see themselves from the outside looking in. They're too in it, because self-serving, feeling so self-important.
They can tell themselves they're a good person. And
sure.
like, that's the thing.
And in some ways they
Ratched.
are. I mean, God, I love this movie. It's like, it's hitting me. I haven't watched it in a minute. I'm like, I become more of an adult. So it's like the system, right? Just this movie is like, here is the system, right? And I'm like, this time around, really empathizing and being like, yeah, well, also these guys, their jobs are really hard, even though, again, I still have that naive kind of like, fuck these guys, like this is the man, they suck, like, you can read this movie in so many different ways. It's so nuanced,
because there's so many films in the 70s, and I think the 70s are an interesting vantage point of, they're reacting to the counterculture of the 60s, right? And when you
Yeah.
look at the counterculture of the 60s, it's hard, especially in the 70s, when you look at the counterculture of the 60s, it's hard not to color it with how the 60s ended, right? That it was very easy as an artist in the 60s to go, yeah, man, no rules. Tear all the rules down. Fuck the system. Tear down all the rules. And then post Altamont, post Manson family, post all of that, there was a move in the 70s to go, okay, maybe some rules. We do actually need some of these rules. It seems like we maybe need... It reminds me a bit, not to get too in the weeds of it, but like, you remember when Occupy was at its height, right? Occupy Wall Street, and that was going on, right?
Man. I didn't shower for weeks.
And we were all...
I didn't go.
Oh, all right. Well, we were... Okay, so I won't say we were all down there, but like, you went down there and it was like...
I mean, I walked by it. I was joking, of course, that I was there for weeks. I didn't go. I'm not going to try and claim that. That's for the people who, had to go poop at a McDonald's for like 2 weeks. That's for them to own.
But it was one of those things where like, it started out with this idea of like, hey man, everybody's going to do their own thing. Like, we're all just going to be chill here, right? And then you reach a certain point where you're like, people are stealing shit. People are just stealing shit. We maybe need to have a no stealing here. We maybe like it started out like, and that is the thing that happens in all of these. Like, I think of that because that always struck me. It was like when I got down there the first day and I was hearing people go, we share everything here. Like, we don't believe in personal property. Like, if I have something you need, man, then you can have it. And then like by day 3, it was, I'd really like my phone. Does anybody know where my phone went? I'm not. And I think that when you talk about the 60s and you reflect on the 60s and the vantage point this comes from, Ben, when you're saying like, these people have hard jobs, right? It's in a way like Nurse Ratched isn't representative of necessarily the system so much as she's representative of Nixon in a way, right? Just to put it in the 70s parlance of like, the system may not be, the system is flimsy, not because the system is inherently flawed. American democracy is not just like inherently broken so much as it's like whatever has happened in the last 30, 40, 50 years that a guy like Nixon can come in and think that it is okay to spy on people domestically and think that it is okay to do all of this stuff. Ratched she's gotten to the point where she thinks it's okay.
Bro, look at the people though who were hippies.
Yeah.
What they are doing to us now. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
They're become the thing they despised. Like the baby boomers, that generation, the shit that they're putting the rest of us all through right now, it's so disgusting. It's crazy.
And there's so many...
I have so much contempt actually in this way because it's like, it's the hypocrisy of it is so disgusting. It's like if you were like a yuppie in the 80s and you were obsessed with greed, like, yeah, okay, but the thing of like peace and love, man, like, and I have my own opinions about hippies where I find a lot of the people who participated in that whole culture in that moment were so deeply corny in a way, and it's still so pervasive, and it's just like it drives me crazy. I can't stand it. But yeah, it's just like what these like peace and love, like fucking like we are all sharing, I'm a communist has become like vile, like I'm out for only mines and I don't care about anyone else, and I want to like dial back on all social services, and just it's like it's crazy. And so I feel you.
And what allows for that,
I think it's a vicious cycle.
Well, and what allows that, I've been talking about this, Tom and I were talking about this not that long ago too, about the idea of like there's this theme running through a lot of films now reflecting on the culture, which is you're seeing, you saw it in Killers of the Flower Moon, in Oppenheimer, you saw it this year in Juror Number 2, and a lot of movies, this idea of the evil that people will perpetrate when they tell themselves, I'm a good person. Throughout Killers of the Flower Moon, we keep hearing Leo go, I'm a good, or he keeps being told, you're a good person. You're a good person. And Oppenheimer is like, well, no, we have to do this. I'm a good. And obviously, I'm not spoiling anything, but folks, if you see the end of Juror number 2, there's an incredible monologue of the same idea. And I think that Ratched, and that's, again, to evoke the Murphy thing that gets wrong, Ratched really, to me, represents somebody who started from a place of, I'm gonna do what helps these people. And then somewhere along the lines, she kept telling herself she's a good person so much, she never actually interrogates that. And, you guys mentioned when she finds Billy's body, and there is a human reaction from her for a minute. Because she never even considered that was a possibility. She never considered that would do irreparable harm,
Yeah, it really is just a case of making it's arguing that, which I feel a lot of things make the mistake of doing, which is saying that the system itself is bad. And it's like, okay, I can understand that argument, but I think the real actual thing that we need to interrogate is that it's that the system allows people to come in and break it, because the system, we got to talk about what the world we're living in right now. The system was ostensibly working for a while, may not have been perfect, but we had a system where if you made enough noise, you could get your elected officials to make changes and make things and start pushing things in the right way. And now we live in a world where one guy, one horrible man, realized I can get into this position of power and just do whatever I want for my own personal benefit, and I don't care if it's going to hurt millions and millions of people, not just here but around the world. That's not, and I think coming from Miloš Forman,
the Nixon thing too.
But I think that's coming.
Right?
But yeah. I think coming from Miloš Forman latching onto this material is that he came from a part of the world where it wasn't capitalism that was taken over and ruined by one man. It was communism. It was socialism. There's no good world where fascism's a good thing. So the Germany stuff is not necessarily fitting within this the part of the discussion. But he came from a part of the world where something that we could take bits and pieces of, and that we still, from the most annoying people on the internet, will tell you is the only good thing that's ever existed, and make it work. You have to you need to try to I try to have these arguments. So I was like, yeah, but you're missing the point that people, you get the wrong person in the job, you will still just get a bad system but under a new name. And I think that's ultimately the thing that the movie is getting at, which is that, and that's the thing that breaks McMurphy, is that she cheats. She changes the rules. She's not actually here to help. She is here to wield her little fucking power in her little fiefdom just to feel like she's important. And there's the guys that are there just because they need work, because the system makes it where, well, sometimes we have to take shitty jobs and we try to make the best of it. And I'll play basketball with these guys, whatever. I'll try to make it as human as possible for them. But at the end of the day, you get that. And, the assistant nurse who's running around the whole time, and with that look on her eyes of something's wrong. I don't have the power to change it. And you even have the doctor who's maybe a bit of a doofus who is a little blind to what's going on, but he seems to have the best intents in his heart. He's
yo, it's crazy how many jobs I've had where you're just this uppity, crazy ass, caring so much about the rules.
It's crazy.
Behavior that I've witnessed from people where I'm we work at a fucking garden center. Chill out. What is your fucking problem? And I think it's that inherent nature of people feeling like they need to be the hall monitor for all of us for some fucking reason. Take the sash off.
It's trying to get as much. It's trying to get as much power as they can, And it's a little bit of the bootlicker thing, which is like,
Sure.
if I, tattle on everyone else, I'll be safe, right? And it's like, not,
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but I guess I could see where you would think that way, but like, it's all just fucked up. And a thing that watching it in the current climate we live in, and also being an adult, you really do kind of
Congrats.
like, thank you, humble brag.
Yeah.
You do get, I felt so much more empathy for the situation of that all these guys chose to be in there. Well, most of
Oh
them.
man. Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
where it's just like, the one guy's closeted and he can't deal with it. Billy's clearly got sexual hangups from his mother.
Right.
There's all, Cheswick is just like a real bundle of nervous energy, and he just doesn't know how to like stand, like be a grown up. You like being now in my 30s, and just like from the way I felt when I was in my probably 13 when I saw this the first time, and now it's just like, oh right, I do understand that, like that feeling of like, oh, everything is just bad. There's no fixing anything. Things are just going to keep getting worse. Let me just disappear and just like go into a hospital and have every even if there's like, I don't know, there's just something about it of just like, I get it. I get why these guys just like looked at the world that they're in and kind of just gave up.
I want to jump on something you just said, Tom, because I do think it's interesting. You mentioned the guy. Now, you described him as closeted. The guy we've mostly been saying is like an effeminate man. The novel dips into his character more. We actually meet his wife in the original Kesey novel, and she is just like constantly berating him and telling him he's not enough of a man.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think is interesting about his character, especially on my most recent rewatch, is he is a more intellectual, less traditionally masculine man who we don't actually, there's nothing in the film or in the novel to indicate that he is actually what everybody is telling him he is, which is a homosexual. And I think that that's important. That's an important distinction, because the tension of his character, in a way, it's sort of the opposite of, we talk a lot. I mean, we can talk about a million films that have explored this idea of like the mental anguish that comes from people trying to force heteronormativity onto you, right? If you are somebody who is queer and people are trying to go, no, you're not, or people like, obviously I Saw the TV Glow explores this, films explores. With his character, there's almost something interesting about the idea that people keep kind of telling him, well, you're not enough of a man. Like, because you are not a big, strong, tough man, that must mean you're a homosexual. And whether or not his character is closeted or not, the thing that's fucking with him is essentially like the thing that, even though you would not view that character as like a nonconformist in the hippie sense, right? He's essentially just dealing with the same thing of like, whether it's the hospital or his own wife, they're all going, yeah, but isn't there a chance you like fellas? And, maybe he is deeply closeted, but there's also the other angle, and the novel, doesn't confirm anything either way either. There's also the other angle, which is, here's this guy who's just like essentially going, no, my wife's just mean. Like, I just don't like my wife. It's not, I don't like my wife, and I want to read books. Like, this is not what, and it's your perspective on that shifts a bit,
Like I said this earlier, and I think we should just go through, because like there's so many great characters in this ensemble, like Christopher Lloyd. It's crazy how just much he pops, how much Danny DeVito pops. I love the character Cheswick, and we've been kind of talking through, but what is so important to me about their performances is they like play them with a lot of empathy and a lot of realness and authenticity. And you feel their humanity, and there's not an ounce or an inch of them, the actor giving that cheeky little kind of like, I'm in on it, or like I think so little of this character that I'm playing them in a bigger way or something. Like, these guys are all really grounded, and it's just, as much as Nicholson obviously is incredible, it's like everyone in this cast elevates the work in an incredible way. It's like fucking one of the best movies.
Can I give a
truly.
bit of background as to how that happened? Because I was listening to Forman and Michael Douglas, who was a producer on this film. We haven't talked about that, but young Michael Douglas produced this film. And one of the things they did, they filmed this in an Oregon mental hospital, a functioning Oregon mental hospital.
Which is, isn't that where Kesey wrote it, or was he in California?
I don't recall.
Because Ken Kesey, the author, really did work in a psychiatric ward.
Facility,
I don't remember what role he had, but I think he was like a night guard.
Yeah. So they filmed this in this Oregon hospital, and Douglas talked about, like, they could have filmed it on sound stages. It's mostly indoors, but they wanted the verisimilitude. And when they went to this hospital and they spoke to the man who would, Dr. Brooks, as we see him in the film, they spoke to him and went, "Can we film here?" And he told them, on the condition that as extras in the film, you hire some of the patients. I think it would be good for them. I think it'd be therapeutic. So the main cast that you see, obviously DeVito, Lloyd, any of the people who have like real speaking roles in this, they are all actors, but the other guys you see in the background, right? The other guys you see for like one scene, that, the people who are not as functional, those are real inmates those are all real patients in the facility. And that inspired them to approach this and have access to these people in a number of ways. It started with them going to, the man running the facility and said, "Okay, here's our thing. Here's what you're going to do for us. We're going to give you the script. We want you to analyze all of these characters that Ken Kesey has written, analyze all these characters, and tell us what you would actually diagnose them with. And then, once you diagnose them, we want you to actually bring these actors into these group therapy sessions, and we want to give them a real patient to observe." So all of these performances, DeVito's, Martini, Christopher Lloyd's character, all of them, they are informed by these guys actually spending time observing somebody who was really afflicted with whatever their character was diagnosed with. So I think, to what you were saying about the empathy of it, Ben, and not being kind of above it all of them are empowered by and charged with there being a real, at least, 1, 2, 3 real people that they feel obligated to represent. And once you see somebody going through whatever these characters are going through, you're not really able to look down your nose on it the same way or play it kind of smart to the camera, Yeah. And so I think that really informs that sense of empathy that you're describing, is the way they went about not just casting this film, but preparing these actors. They were in this facility for like 10 to 12 hours a day, so.
Damn. Yo, also shock therapy, it's still so visceral.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we did this to people. I can't believe the history of how mental illness was dealt with. It's so despicable. It's crazy to think of like how inhumane it was for so long. I hate that scene. It makes me so but I loved. One of the best bits is when Nicholson comes back from the first time.
Yeah,
and he's like a zombie, and then is like, like that's so good. It's like, it just shows everyone that like they didn't break his spirit, it's great.
And
but it's like, it's so, this movie is so it really man, it's like the mental illness and how we I live in New York City. I see people out on the streets and on our subways who are just so in another world, or just like really having an episode or just a really hard time in their life. And it's like heartbreaking to witness it. And yet I'm so distracted by my phone and stuff. Like this movie's a reminder of like how hard it is for people struggling with like real like really impactful, challenging parts of themselves that it's like debilitating to a point where they can't even really have a normal life. It sucks.
And I think, Ben, it's interesting you mentioned the electroshock therapy in this. Tom, do you know where I'm going to go with this? Maybe you had the same thought watching it this time.
I don't know.
Okay. So in the time between when Kesey writes the novel and this film coming out, the national conversation on electroshock therapy had shifted dramatically. I don't know if you know about this, Ben, because of the 1972 presidential election. Do you remember this, Tom? Do you know?
No, I've never heard this.
No.
So in 1972, Nixon's running for re-election, and it shouldn't be too hard to beat Nixon because Watergate's breaking out. There's a whole fraught Democratic primary, and the guy who ends up securing the nomination is kind of like what was considered like the most leftist candidate of the time, a guy named George McGovern. And McGovern is running on the idea of, I'm going to pardon the draft dodgers. We're going to end Vietnam. Like, he's everything that you would want to hear. He was kind of I'm not drawing any comparisons other than to say, like, the energy around McGovern from the youth in America in 1972 was akin to like the Bernie movement in like 2016. McGovern gets the nomination, and he selects as his VP a guy named, I believe, Tom Eagleton. And they announce Tom Eagleton at the convention as his running mate. And within 24 hours, it hits the newspaper that Eagleton had undergone electroshock therapy for severe depression. And suddenly, this thing that had been already sensationalized in movies, right? Already kind of treated as, and I'm not talking like mainstream, like a B-movie filmmakers, as Tom could probably attest, B-movie filmmakers in the 50s and 60s loved the idea that you could have somebody lay on a table and go, "Rah!" Everything all right?
My cat just scratched me. It scared me.
Sorry,
Sorry, continue.
But suddenly, the idea of this electroshock therapy was on the national stage, right? And Eagleton ends up dropping out, and they put somebody else as McGovern's running mate. But like everybody, even Hunter S. Thompson was like, that was the end of McGovern's campaign. Like that was it. That was done. Yeah. And Nixon wins re-election in a landslide. But it just struck me watching it this time to think about, like, right, when Kesey's writing this in the novel, right, it's just another thing happening in this mental hospital. But now in 75, right, and you're making this in 74, 73, 74, we've just been having a national conversation where the possible vice president had to step down because it hit the papers that he sought electroshock therapy treatment. And it just kind of colors all of that slightly differently, to me. It's an interesting layer on top of this, like where that was in the national conversation.
I've never heard that before. I'm aware of McGovern.
Yeah.
But if
you want more anarchy and people doing bits, Ben, please pick up Hunter Thompson's On the Campaign Trail 72. You'll have some fun with that one. He gets up to semantics.
Yeah, man. And then like the next step is lobotomies.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that very much has happened for a very long time. terrible stuff.
I mean,
Okay.
it's a thing that I've talked about with with friends about when you think about history and like for friends of mine, like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a big thing we talk about. Westerns with other friends, or like Mike brought up Killers of the Flower Moon before. That when you think about it, like 120 years ago, and before that, how we truly just did not treat human life as something sacred. We just kind of threw human bodies into the grinder without like a second thought. Whether it's about how we dealt with mental health or just the way working conditions were, we threw kids into the coal mines to fucking do jobs and stuff. A movie like this reminds you that maybe things haven't changed as much as we would like to think. We've maybe just put a band-aid on it in some regards, or we've just try to distract you from the fact that things aren't so great, because like we're me and Mike are from New York too, so we see this shit all the time, of the homeless guys and gals that are clearly dealing with mental illness, and you go, oh, I guess it's not a great thing that we just don't do anything about this. We just kind of let them live in this miserable existence of like.
Oh, but it's so nuanced, because also people deserve to have autonomy over
That's the
themselves. But then there becomes this thing of like, how do you decide, when it crosses a line of like a person is endangering themselves?
No, exactly. It's a difficult conversation, but there's clearly
Yeah.
like there. It's a nuanced conversation, but that like you said, sometimes you see some people that are very clearly just like, all right, you're in another world. Like,
Dude.
It's not safe for you. It's not safe for others, because in the state you're in, not to say you're violent, but like you might walk onto the subway tracks and get killed, or you might
Not even that.
walk
It's
into
like,
someone else and knock them into the subway track,
be
or
violent towards somebody, randomly. It's like, but then because then of course, like, not, like, there's such a small, like, there's zero chance of that actually ever happening to you if you were in New York City riding like public transit or walking
oh no,
around. Like, it's a very safe
yeah.
place, but yeah, I don't know. There is still like, it's been sensationalized almost.
No, it's
Too,
been
in
sensationalized,
this
and
way.
I'm not trying to continue the sensationalization, but there's millions upon millions of people crammed into a few tiny boroughs. So there's going to be statistics that maybe seem higher than in other places or whatnot.
Sure.
So we're gonna see this, especially because New York is so cramped. Everything is so on top of each other. It's not like, I go to Austin every year for Fantastic Fest, and they have their own homeless problem. But unless you're driving by like underpasses or specific areas, you don't really notice it, because Austin is so spread out. New York is so condensed that like you
Yeah.
can't help but not see it. So it's like, and it's just one of those. It's like, I don't know. Either way, it's a movie like this. Just really like the way it connects to it, the time the book was written to when the movie was made. How the director connected his childhood to the world he was living in the 70s, and the way all of these things are connecting to the way we look at the world now, where in some ways mental health treatment has gotten better, and in other ways we sort of let people just drift off into an abyss, and we just sort of ignore them and say, oh well, that's not really our problem anymore, blah blah blah, or we use them as a scapegoat when a tragedy happens.
Yeah.
Corruption within all sorts of systems that we have now, because of just horrible sadistic people that just want power. And not all of them are fucking Trump. There's a lot of people that are just like Ratched, where it's just like, hey, I think I should instill my will upon other people, and just because I'm not getting my hands dirty and, actually killing people with my bare hands, I can ignore the fact that what I'm doing is hurting people. But it's
I
going to make me
wanted
feel good because I'm in power.
I wanna make sure there's one thing I wanted to do before we brought the plane in for a landing. And I know we could have talked about Chief. We could have talked about Brad Dourif accidentally doing the Chucky
Oh,
voice
we
at the end
gotta
of the
talk about
movie.
Chief though. Chief rules.
Chief is great.
Chief's
His bit before the before the electroshock therapy, where you realize he's actually been aware and able to talk the whole time, is just
Which
so
is
great. And
and it's
Nicholson's
not in the
reaction
book.
to it is so funny.
And that's
It's
not
not
the
in the
book.
book?
Because
Huh.
it's the reveal is in the book, but Chief narrates the book.
Yeah.
So we're in his mind the whole time.
No, I love it. I love it. It does well, whatever. It's of its time. There's like the trope of like the noble and, wise Native American character thing, but I love it. I just love how Nicholson goes out of his way to connect with someone, and when so many people are saying he's a lost cause, like that, to Nicholson is like, nah, fuck that. Like,
But even
no
he
one's a
does that.
lost cause.
Even he does that at the beginning. Remember, his first introduction to Chief is doing like stereotypical cowboys and
Yeah.
Indian shit to him.
Yeah. It's
I-
true.
I
It's
will
true.
share this anecdote about the actor who plays Chief, which is so Ben. Last year, I went down to North Carolina as research for my day job, and I was at the site of the former Roanoke colony, which is now the Fort Raleigh National Historic Site. And as my significant other knows, and much to her frustration, I love old, creaky museum films. They're one of my favorite little pleasures in this world. Like, I don't like new museum films where they're like cutting edge. I want it to be creaky. I want it to be from the 70s. I want the sound to warp. You know what I mean? I want the music playing of like a at this
Love
town. So they have one of those. And I was, so we sat down about like, oh, the Roanoke colony. And we're about 3 minutes into the movie, and my partner notices I've grabbed my cell phone. I'm like frantically searching on my phone, and it's dark in the room. She's like, what's wrong? I'm like, and I turned around and went, I think that is Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think an actor, a pivotal actor from one of the greatest films ever made, is also playing Wanchese the Chief in this national parks educational film. And it was very distracting. Because it's just like, oh, right. Yeah, he needed work at certain points. There he is, just hanging out. It was very jarring.
There's been some shows and some films, but very recently, where it's been like indigenous people written, produced, or made by and properly cast, and like the respect is very recent. How the industry has treated indigenous people. So yeah, I mean, that actor was looking to work and practice his craft however he could. But that is like a funny like moment of being like, I know this guy.
You know who else? You know who else was in it? A young Giancarlo Esposito.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about this movie though, when you compare it to like something like The Revenant, right? Where the whole movie's about Leo trying to get his revenge, and then he's about to
that movie is about revenge.
Yeah. I know it's subtle, but it is about revenge.
Wait, dude. You're right.
Subtle. Inarritu is one of the best masters of the subtle filmmaking.
He seemed, and this might be crazy, like he was kind of cold.
I think so. Maybe, you know what? I think that's why he had the that nice, really furry coat on for most of the movie.
As much as I love the dunk on that movie, and it is so like an actor being like, I committed to this role in this crazy way. I deserve an award. It's extremely watchable. I love Hardy in it.
Hardy's
I've
great.
like watched it.
But-
I've watched it a couple of times and I'm like so guilty. But
like,
anyway, sorry.
you watch the movie, and the way that movie ends of the Native Americans coming and killing Hardy to make sure like Leo doesn't, succumb to the darker instincts, and basically saving him from committing an atrocity or what have you. A movie like The Nightingale, which was the next movie from the woman who did The Babadook, kind of does the same thing, having the native come and save the white person from some sort of horrible fate and teaching them a lesson about. This movie doesn't do that. Jack is the one that has to die to save Chief. He's the one that has to give Chief this lesson of just like, no, don't, like, I know the world helped destroy your father, who was a big man like me and lived his own life and all of that, and was an individual. Don't let what happened to your father and what's happening to me keep you from living your own life, because it's better than this. It's interesting how they cast an actual native guy, and while there may be some bits you kind of just chalk it up to the era, or just even like giving some verisimilitude to the era the movie set in 1963, how this movie kind of like is one of those like throughout history there's always like weird examples of like, oh wait, this one thing from 1974 was really good about Native American stuff, but then like you have to jump like 30 or 40 years to like I don't know, like Dark Winds or whatever on AMC, or Blood Quantum.
I just started watching that show. It fucking rules.
But like, it's like these weird little pockets that pop up of just like, oh, so it was possible to not be, problematic about how you portrayed things. It just took somebody being like, well, wait, why are we doing it like that? Why don't we just treat them like, I don't know, people?
Well, and you know what? You got to give it up to Kesey.
Yeah.
This is very much based on his novel, and
yeah,
he was the one that was progressive in that way. Okay, can I throw out kind of my final thought?
Oh yes,
Okay.
I had one. You do that. I had one thing I was going to ask of you before we wound down, but if you have final thoughts, give that first.
I'm wearing a black beanie.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholson, because I'm getting into fashion. And we got to shout out the looks in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholson in his leather bomber jacket,
Mm-hmm.
the black hat, the like super broken in Levi's jeans. He is. I can't help but just keep like reiterating, like, he's so cool. Like, I am obsessed. And it's like he's wearing the simplest clothes, right? Like, that's the true testament to if someone can wear really basic clothes and somehow make them look like a fucking $1 million. He's like, I love it. I really I love even just like the way he like zips up his coat inside. I don't know why there's that small detail that I love. Like, he's always ready to go and yet he's still staying. But I needed to make sure that I shouted that out.
Now, I had something to ask you, Ben, before we do our usual closeout, which is, I'm going to ask you to get creative for a second. I know we've kept you a while, but I'm going to ask you to get.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to get creative a second. You love doing bits,
Yes.
and you enjoy fucking with people. So I'm going to ask you to thought experiment.
In a nice way, like, or in a fun way.
So I'm going to go ahead and, like, when you picked up somebody in Roller Coaster Tycoon, let's say there is no McMurphy. You have been picked up and dropped in this exact setting of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Sure.
What bits do you do to fuck with Nurse Ratched? How do you disrupt things?
Oh God. Okay. And I'm kind of like Nicholson's character, where I'm like McMurphy in that I'm only there to get out of having to do real like hard labor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You were arrested for shoplifting from the Wiz. And they finally caught you. You did not beat the Wiz. You want to get out of manual labor, so you go into this institution.
Okay. I would definitely try to like start like anytime like a certain word was mentioned, I would try to quote like a song that was popular at that time. Like, and I don't know how to equate it, so I'll just give the example of like one of my bits is whenever someone says, "Is it worth it?" I very quickly will say, "Can I work it?" Flip it day and now and then reverse it. It's like so as it's like become a tick. I've been doing it for probably like 15 years now. Everyone in my life is so annoyed by it because it's so disruptive of like someone trying to genuinely have to say like, or genuinely trying to say something. And I'm just like interrupting them with the stupid bit. So I would do something like that, where I would just like make sure it's a common enough thing that I would hit it really hard and like start to just like, you know, turn the screw. I would definitely also try to escape. Right. But I'm not a fishing guy. I would go shoot crossbows. Because I think that that's a bonding experience. And it's similar in a way. And I just think it would teach everyone, it would be a way that you could get in touch with your inner self. And I feel passionately about that. And then number 3, where I would, yeah, I guess I would invite like people over to the hospital late at night. And obviously like the party looks like a grand old time. But I also think that to be even a little wholesome, what about friggin' everyone gets a little high and then they like eat a bunch of burgers. Like, you know what I mean? Like go crazy munchy, like everyone gets nuts. So even like to repeat the same thing in the movie, the next day, instead of there being booze, everyone's just like had so much junk food.
So you're just offering Scatman Crothers a White Castle crave case. That's what you're doing.
Well, is White Castle even around yet? I mean, that's the thing. But like, I'm talking like, I'm like to Scatman, I'm like, it's the biggest friggin' fucking mummy finger you've ever seen in your fucking life. And I'm like, let's go. And then everyone else gets in and they're just like, we're having a blast.
Amanda, that is your social media clip for this episode. It's just start from Ben saying, I would to Scatman just offer the biggest mummy finger, and then just let it run from there. Last thing, winding down as we always do. Tom, how do you think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did at the Academy Awards that year?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm going to probably get the exact number wrong, but I know it like basically swept in almost like every fucking category it got nominated. I know it won Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
It won Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
It won Best Actor.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dourif was nominated,
Actress.
but he didn't win. Yes, Best Actress.
Mm-hmm. Who'd you say was nominated, Tom?
Dourif.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He was nominated but didn't win, which is a shame.
Correct.
He's fantastic in it. Screenplay, did it win?
Mm-hmm.
Did it win cinematography?
No, and
Okay.
you'll
Was it
understand why.
nominated?
It was.
What did it lose to?
So let's go down this, because this actually came up recently on, I'm going to get your plug in early, Ben. This came up recently on Blank Check.
Hey.
On, you were sitting there. I don't know when you guys recorded your episode on Jaws, but your co-hosts disparaged the film you're talking about today. So on your Jaws episode, you were talking about the Oscars, and David talks about what a great year of nominees this was, and then goes, and the winner is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is like the weakest one. And I'm like sitting there listening to this going, Ben's about to talk about this.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. So
wait, what were the other nominees?
So the other nominees are Barry Lyndon, Dog Day Afternoon.
Wait, Barry Lyndon is though one of my favorite movies of all time. Continue.
Because it's Irish people doing schemes. And
yeah, and it's one of the great comedies, but great stories. Just it's so epic and incredible. Continue. Sorry.
So Barry Lyndon, Dog Day Afternoon,
crazy,
Jaws,
fuck,
and Robert Altman's Nashville.
Wow.
A goddamn murderer's row. So as Tom mentioned, this is one of only 3 movies to win the big 5 categories: actor, actress, picture, director, and screenplay. That has only happened 3 times. It happened one night. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Silence of the Lambs are the only 3 to achieve that. And we'll be talking about It Happened One Night. It happened one night later this season. So it won director, Nicholson won actor, Louise Fletcher won actress. As Tom noted, Brad Dourif was nominated for supporting actor. He lost to George Burns for the movie The Sunshine Boys, which...
Sure.
Little bit of category fraud on that one. He's a co-lead. It was a real Kieran Culkin situation.
I love Sunshine Boys.
I love it.
It's one of my
but
because I love the sunshine. I love the boys.
Okay, so you don't. So you don't know the film. All right. I thought I was.
Sorry.
It's a good. No, it is a good time. The Sunshine Boys is a comedy.
Well, the boys are so bright because of the sunshine, of course.
It's Walter
and
Matthau.
When they're not lit so brightly by the sun, you're like, bring back my Sunshine Boys, and they do.
Listen, I'm not going to pitch what you should do on your other show, Ben, but I believe anytime they don't know the movie in the box office game, they don't know what it is, I think you should be allowed to make up the plot like that. That's my pitch.
I'll keep that one in my back pocket because why not? Yeah. These kinds of things come up, and it might just be a bit.
Put it in the back pocket, and then take that back pocket with the rest of the pants and bury it in the backyard. So it was nominated for supporting actor, lost. It did win Best Adapted Screenplay. Now here are the other 3 it was nominated for that it lost. It was nominated for score, nominated for cinematography, and nominated for film editing. It loses score and editing to Jaws and loses cinematography to Barry Lyndon. So you just can't be mad.
Yeah, I get it.
You just can't be mad.
Wow, Sim's really saying the weakest. I mean, fuck, that's like one of those things where that's like the hardest call to make based on the other nominees. I don't know about that statement. I don't stand by it.
Well, Ben, I would say take him to task for it, but there's no chance that any of us
recorded months
ago.
No,
and also none of us are going to remember this tomorrow. We'll remember the conversation, but I don't think tomorrow you're going to wake up and go, I got to yell at David about a thing he said months ago. It's not happening. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I
don't think so.
No, not a chance. Not a chance.
Homie, don't play that.
Prior to the margarita, perhaps, but not after. That's not happening. So, Ben, on that note, as we've already talked about your podcast and you've already talked about fashion, here is your opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us. Please plug away with everything you have to plug, and God knows you have a lot going on this year. So,
yeah, Blank Check's got some live stuff coming up. We'll be doing it in New York City. Yeah, I guess at this point we officially announced that we're doing Town Hall again.
Announced just hours before we recorded this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So That will be June 6th. Please come out. It'll be a fun show. I can't give well, no, I guess we in the announcement give it away. We're covering King Ralph, which is sort of a 90s comedy that has loomed large on the podcast. We've, for many years promised maybe this will be the time we do a Ben's Choice covering King Ralph, and we're finally doing it now for our big live show at Town Hall for our 10th anniversary. So you can just go to Blank Check's social media to get information on how to get those tickets. And I have merch. I have it's fashion. I have fashion. Fuck. It's fashion. For sale. It's the brand's called Congratulations. You can go to youlations.com. You can do it. And I have all kinds of slow Christmas albums available now. Obviously, it's probably like not the best time for holiday music, but I don't know. Maybe if you're in the mood, you can check it out. That's all I got, though. Thanks again for having me. It's a pleasure to discuss such an awesome film.
Thank you for coming, man. It was a blast.
And we look forward to having you back next time around, which would be your 5th appearance. Get you in that 5-timers club. Could be a hoot and a holler.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just got to say to you boys, I want to just give you a big missing out.
I appreciate it.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Okay, so there's a lot of ways and avenues you could go down with this kind of movie in regards to trying to pick a movie to pair up with it that you think should go in the registry. At the end of the day, I kind of just went simple with it. I had a few choices, but I kind of just wanted to keep it simple. And we talked a lot about the megastar wattage of Jack Nicholson in this movie. And I kind of just wanted to get like that sort of era of his where he was starting to blow up, and he wasn't just a guy that was one of the Corman stock players. And he started bursting out of that into and becoming just one of the great all-time actors and movie stars. So I picked a movie that is a part of this trajectory, this fucking meteor, this fucking rocket ship shooting into the sky, I should say. That also does feel a bit of a piece with this kind of movie in some ways about the era and the way the system sort of fails its people, and it's about the people having to sort of like come together in their moments to give each other comforts and what for. I'm going with The Last Detail, the Hal Ashby movie. I think that movie's really great. I know it has it's not like an under. I don't know. I think at this point in time, it maybe is a bit of an undervalued, underrated movie, maybe even an under-discussed movie, just because of the sheer power of some of the stuff that Nicholson has made afterwards. A movie like this, or a Chinatown, or a Shining, or what have you. But I think this is a very vital piece of the Jack Nicholson star making phase. And, Hal Ashby's one of those guys that I think, because he died young and maybe wasn't as flashy as some of his contemporaries, but was just as vital in crafting what the 70s cinematic language was. And I think as much as we can get of his great work in We Should, so pairing that with the Jack Nicholson Power Hour, I think The Last Details should be in here. I think it's a great movie. It's a sad movie. It's a funny movie. It's an insightful movie. It's a movie that, inspired a weird, like, semi kind of sequel, like 40 years later by Richard Linklater. That's more about the book than the movie, and it's a weird thing. But that movie's good too. But either way, I think this is one of the great undersung 70s pictures, and it's one of Jack's best performances. And I think it needs to be in there. And what better way than to pair it with one of Jack's, maybe the Jack performance of all Jack performances. So my pick is The Last Detail.
This is one of those times, we've been doing these registry picks for 5 years now, and I often say it with confidence what I pick. And Tom also makes fun of me that a lot of times my picks are very old movies, sometimes very obscure movies. And this might be the only time where I almost wish I didn't have to do this. But I do have to do this. It feels like the perfect pairing to me, even though the actual thing itself that I'm about to say is one of the most kind of basic film choices. But it has to be done. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as we discussed heavily in this episode, is about a guy showing up and shocking the system. And it comes from that very 60s, 70s vantage point where a guy showing up and shocking the system is good. A guy showing up and shocking the system is important, and it frees these guys from this oppressive system that they're living in. And about 24, 25 years later, we have a much different view on this, and a much more cynical view on this. And the story of a guy showing up and trying to wake a bunch of men out of the stupor of the doldrum of their lives is a lot more upsetting, and or at least it should be. But a lot of people misunderstand it, and so we have a lot of idiots who take Fight Club literally, and that's got to be my pick here, because to me, watching Cuckoo's Nest this time, as I said, it's not about good guy, bad guy. It becomes the relationship between the system and the disruptor, and how the chief failing of the system isn't just how it fails people, it's how it allows somebody like an R.P. McMurphy to rise and to take that kind of power. And I think you see that same thing with the Tyler Durden character in Fight Club. It's a warning and a premonition of the fact that these disaffected men can be taken over by a charismatic figure if you just make them feel disempowered enough. It's a kind of a mirror image to the 60s, 70s rebellion, is this kind of 90s nihilism. We've talked a lot in past seasons about, like, Fight Club does seem like something that inevitably gets in the registry. It's a part of the fabric of film conversation today. It's not, it would not be the first Fincher now, because this year Social Network got in, but it feels overdue. It's an important film, a seismic film. Now, it certainly didn't have the success that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did when it first came out, but it's become a part of the film language, and I think offers an interesting counterpoint to the rebelliousness of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So my pick is Fight Club.
Next week,
our dear friend Jay Kim returns to the show once again, this time to discuss 1915's The Cheat.
I'm kind of conflicted, obviously, when you say that Ceci was this, he was also kind of sexualized by white women who threw themselves on him. But I guess it's refresh as somebody who's an Asian American actor, male. It just feels refreshing.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.